Thank you all so much for coming today. My name is Emily Adams, and my sister is also here. There's Katie in the back. And I also want to say thank you very much to my kids and my niece. My niece Alice came with Katie. My son Alan is here with his wife Erica, and my daughter Mara is coming. Her connection got canceled in New York City last night, so she won't get here until another hour or two. But we're recording it, so hopefully she can watch it later, and you can all meet her later if you hang around for the potluck and so on. I am, let's see, what the notes here. I'm the daughter of Molly and Barry Adams, who were here since the 1960s in the same house, or a few years at the house next door, and then they moved to 488 Valley Road. And you should know, of course, that does not make them long-time residents, because this is Caroline, this is Brookendale. You are only a long-term resident if you've been here hundreds of years through your extended family. But they have been here a long time, and they were very much devoted to the community and connected to many of you as well. And so it feels very appropriate that we can be having this little service here at the community center, where both my parents at different years were on the board here, and I also later on. What else? So the thought or memory that I wanted to share about my dad, and that I hope all of you will feel free to stand up and say something about him as well, is that I experienced him as a very unassuming person. And maybe a good example of this was, there was one day when I was in high school, I went to school, and all like the teachers and my fellow students were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, congratulations!" And I'm like, "What? What happened?" "Oh, I'm your father. You know, wasn't that great news? I saw it." And I'm like, "What? What? You got this big promotion at Cornell to be like vice provost." And I didn't even know what vice provost was, that he was applying for it, that he was interviewing. I knew nothing. And I was like, and you know, but it was also for him, it was not that big a deal. It was sort of a way for him to be of service, and they asked him, and he said, "Well, okay," and he interviewed, and so he never really made a big deal about those things. And another example I can say is when I came back after my mother passed about 10 years ago. I came back to be with my dad, to be on call and help out. He didn't need a whole lot of help. He was still driving himself down to lifelong learning to give his classes. And so I enrolled, and I came to watch him give a class. And I was like, I don't know this man. He's standing in front of a whole bunch of people, and it's like he flipped a switch, and he was not the father I knew at home. He was like this, you know, at ease, relaxed, sort of gregarious, making a little chit chat with people in the front row, and I'm like, who is this? It was wonderful. But again, it reminds me how, you know, he didn't come off as flashy, but he could have if he wanted to, but he didn't feel the need to do that, which I found very, very impressive. So then most recently, I've been living at home with him for 10 years. We remodeled the house so that he could live on the ground floor, and we were next to him. And our days consisted of, you know, it's a meal share, but sometimes he just wanted to do his own meal, and he was like, "Oh, okay." But we would share a meal and talk about origins of some words, because some word would be mentioned, and my husband, who's not a native English speaker, would say, "What's that word?" And you know, so Dad would then explain where it came from, and we'd talk about, "Oh, is that related to this word in German?" and so on. And it became, my relationship with him became something like, you know, your favorite old comfortable sweater. It doesn't have to be flashy. It's this sort of the same thing every day. and it's comfortable. And when you get really comfortable, you don't need to have a lot of words around it either. So I knew he loved me. He knew I loved him. And it kind of got expressed by me bringing him another pile of iron handkerchiefs when he was out of handkerchiefs. And, or it would be expressed when I would take him to a doctor's appointment and the doctor would say, oh, who have you brought with you? And he'd say, oh, this is my daughter. She takes such good care of me. That was sort of the extent of the demonstration of the emotion, which is also in keeping with being a professor's daughter and so on. Emotions got a little complicated if you try to express them a little bit, anything more than that. So then what happened is my father, who fought bravely on through COPD for many years and just kept doing his thing, at one point he couldn't do his thing anymore, and it was pretty rapid decline after that, and then he was gone. And it was different. I mean, when my mother passed, that was also very moving for me, but I hadn't been living with her for 10 years. So having my father pass and then having every little thing in the house and in the routine of life be reminding me of him, and then him not being there, it was just really hard. And I found that I was kind of getting stuck and not able to connect to that comfortable sweater feeling. I said, I know he's living on. I believe he's still there, but I just can't be my usual happy self. But he did, I feel convinced he did things from the other side, because after he was gone, we needed somebody to live in his apartment, or we weren't going to be able to pay the mortgage. It was kind of a pretty urgent thing. So what do we do? And I just sort of put out a little cry to the universe. Will here in the front saw my one single post on Facebook. Does anybody know what we might do with this space? And he connected me with a friend of his, and it turned out to be the perfect person to come live with us and be in that space. And so I'm so blessed that I'm sure somehow my dad connected with you and whatever. We got that taken care of. And then the other thing that happened was I was just feeling like I couldn't, like getting back to my joy and getting connected. Like, how do I do this? And then there was a little ping. Go talk to Diana Lee. Where's Diana? There. I said, Diana, one time years and years ago you said that you could give me some voice lessons or something that would help me be comfortable in my skin in front of a group and be connected. And it all sounded like a pretty cool thing to do. My plate's kind of full, and so is yours. What do you say? And she said, sure, but you maybe want to go see Marty first. So I texted Marty that same 15 minutes and said, Marty, Diana says I should come. And so within a week I was going off and doing voice lessons with Marty. And that was like the best thing that I did for myself maybe my whole life, was just going to see somebody who just took the raw material he had in his hands, which was me in a mess, and said, okay, you can do this, we'll just start with this, we'll do this. And my plan for you was totally different now. We're going to tear that up and we're going to do this today. And we worked around my stage fright and my lack of connection in some ways to music. Like who knew that when you sung a piece of music, a person with a good ear could say whether you were thinking relevant thoughts while you sung it versus thinking about what's for dinner. You gotta think about who you're singing it for and why you're singing it and what your connection is to the music, So I forget it if it's in another language and you never learned what it meant in those words. It was a lost cause. And so I was like, oh, I can't master this the way I normally master life, which is, get very scientific and detailed and stuff. I have to like get into my feelings and my body and all this stuff. So thank you, Marty, for taking me through that journey. And it's not over, but one of the milestones in that process was I wanted to be able to sing here a song with feeling and without totally messing it up. And that it would like let my sort of let things go free and let me honor my dad that way. And I want to say at the same time, oh no, if we're coming to it, the song that we chose was I was hopeless to choose a song because I didn't know anything about this. It's not my background. So Marty gave me a couple things to try, and he gave me eventually the song by John Dowland, and I was like, ooh, this is really cool. I like this one. And the subject is, or at least my interpretation of it, because you have to put your personal interpretation on the song. The interpretation for me was everybody matters, even if they're very small, even if they're not flashy, even if they're just doing little daily things. And that's what I loved about my dad and my mom, and also about my aunt, who's listening right now through the phone here. She's on her deathbed in Boston, my dad's younger sister. And she never married, but she stayed at home and took care of my grandparents and was always doting on the family, and just a kind person, not assuming, not out there doing all the community organizing and stuff that I do, just a regular, solid, good person. And I think her favorite activity was before she moved. Now she's been in this nursing home for a couple of years, but before that she was in sort of a semi-independent living situation, and she volunteered to be the greeter at the cafeteria. So she knew the people, would say hi, welcome, and that's what we need in community. It all matters. Everybody's little bit matters. Even me, my contribution here, which is going to be choked up and I don't know. It's an adventure here. How this is going to turn out. That's what I want to convey, is that it's community. I'm going to do my best, and all of you are doing your best, and my Aunt Mary did her best, and thank you for coming. And I'm going to invite Marty up. This is the first time I've tried singing with the microphone, but I need to do that because otherwise my aunt can't hear. And this will be like the third time I've done it with Marty accompanying me. So
Lots of grace.
Lots of grace. I need lots of grace. Where do I look? What do I do?
They're out there.
One of the best lessons from Marty a couple weeks ago was a real breakthrough for me, was sing to the person standing behind you. And I'm like, what? And so I imagined singing to the person behind me, just to humor the guy, and it did. It made a huge difference. And can I explain it, or do you want to? I mean, it's so wonderful. It's a tip that if you're singing and you're imagining you're trying to reach the little old lady in the back of the room, that thought makes your palate go hard because you're imagining, like subconsciously, projecting the sound on a hard palate, which maybe does make the sound reach back there, but it's not a good sound by the time it gets there. But if you're imagining, oh, you're singing for the person behind you and for somebody who's up in the rafters and somebody sitting down here, then you're it's like singing for yourself, and then things kind of relax in the back of your mouth, and the sound is better, unless you get all tense for other reasons.
What other reason?
What other reasons could there be to be nervous and funny?
There are no other reasons.
Okay, fine.
Shall we?
Follow as trees of hops, the enter gone. The flyers breathe, the little spark is lit. On slender airs, cast shadows thou dost know. And these of stings, although they be not great, seas of their source, unto of shallow springs, and love is love in beggars and in kings. Seas of their source, unto of shallow springs, and love is love in beggars and in kings. For water smoothest one, prepare the forts. The dial stars that none perceives yet move. The furthest fame is in the fewest words. The tempest cannot see, and yet they love. Two hearts have eyes, and ears no tongues to speak. They hear and see and sigh, and then they break. Two hearts have eyes, and ears no tongues to speak. They hear and see and sigh, and then they break. So now we don't have any, like,
Now you can breathe it.
now I can breathe again. I know other people had things they wanted to say. I don't have any particular order. If you just feel like you want to come next. and say something.
I'm not gonna say anything, I'm here for technical reasons.
Okay.
I'm just concerned about that being pointed at this.
Okay.
I'm gonna move this over a little more.
Actually, we can block the
Yes. Thank you, I feel better now. Thanks for it.
Peggy? feel better sitting, I can bring you the microphone.
I just wanted to say that Molly and Barry moved to Burtondale in 1963, and we moved here in 1964, so just a year later than they did. And we were, both couples were very involved with the community center. It opened in 1964 at the time that we moved into our house. And Molly and Barry were really stalwarts with the community center. My husband and I were also very involved with it. When Dave and I looked into the possibility of buying the old fire hall next door when the firemen built their new fire hall up the road, we thought about how we would raise the money to purchase that building. As the firemen said, the community center doesn't have any money, but we felt it was a possibility and an important one for the community center to own that building, because with that building came all the grounds behind here and also the driveways. The center did not own the driveway or the playground. They owned the tennis court in the back corner, but everything else belonged to the fire hall. And when Dave and I decided how much we could put towards the purchase, the first couple that we turned to were Molly and Barry Adams, because we knew that they were community minded as we were, and that if we could get them to match our contribution, we were on the way to getting other people to. And they immediately agreed to match it, and several other couples. We chose couples that had lived in the community for a long time and had been involved with the center, and whose children had completed college, so that they weren't struggling to pay for college at that time. And we had 2 weeks to raise the money, and we did it, and raised money to renovate both buildings. The center was over 40 years old and needed updating. And so Molly and Barry's decision to join us in trying to purchase that building made a huge difference in giving us the oomph to go ahead and contact other people. So they were always wonderful neighbors.
I just wanted to add a little something about good neighbors. Decades ago, we moved here, had never owned a house before in our lives. We had no idea what this was going to mean and what it was going to take and how we were going to do it. And so, well, the first year we were in the house, we had various workmen come, and their invariable mantra was, "I told him not to do it that way." So we had a septic system that was in backwards, so that intake was where outtake was supposed to be. And there were so many things like that. Well, we were very lucky that Barry was next door. And he would come over and say, "Oh, you can do this. I've got the tools for that. You can rely on me." And we did a lot. We even bought something, a weed whacker or something together. but I never did master it. Anyway, it was just absolutely wonderful to have our neighbors next door. You couldn't ask for better ones, and Emily and Paulus have continued this, and they are wonderful neighbors, and you couldn't ask for better ones. So, a tribute to Barry as well as to the whole family.
And Barry was a damn good electrician.
Oh, my goodness, I hope not.
Better than we were.
And the houses are still standing.
Hi, I'm Tim Murray, and I'm both a Brooktondale, longtime Brooktondale resident, colleague of Barry in the Cornell, was a colleague of Barry in the Cornell English Department, and I also currently serve as Deputy Supervisor of the town of Caroline, and I just will tell a few anecdotes in related to that. My wife Renee Farrow and I first moved to Brooktondale in the fall of 1981. We lived in the Canteen House across the creek where Kate Kelly McKenzie lives. And those of you who are here now will remember the flood of the fall of 1981 when the old mill gave way. We were awoken in the middle of the night by this huge rumble and rush, and the old mill where the swing hole used to be a beautiful wooden structure. The whole thing washed down. As soon as the light came out, I rushed down to the bridge in front of what's now Brookton's Market, because we were concerned that would go, and who was standing there? Barry Adams. He was almost the first person out, kind of standing guard over the village. Barry was, many of you wouldn't know this, Barry was one of the world's most renowned specialists in the history of the English language. He taught courses in Old and Middle English, in Early Modern English, also courses in Renaissance literature. It was about 1988 when he became Vice Provost for undergraduate education at Cornell, and weirdly, just this week, Emily, I was cleaning out some files in my study at home, and I came across a memo I wrote to Barry Adams in 1988 when he was Vice Provost for undergraduate education, asking him to support a new initiative in visual studies, which became a very, very big project in the Arts College. I will say, however, he did not fund it. What you also might not realize, many of you, in addition to Barry's commitment to the Brooktondale Community Center, is Barry and Molly were stalwart members of the Caroline Democratic Committee. I don't think Barry was actually on the committee officially, but he was always there. The nature of the town has changed over the past 40 years, and when they first were involved, this was strictly a Republican community. Over time, that changed, and it really changed a lot of it. Partially, we got Molly elected to the Caroline Town Board, where she did a lot of tremendous work. But we could always count on Barry. So Barry would be there to pass out signs. Barry would be there to receive the visitors to the house who Molly sent. Barry, every election night, Barry served as a poll watcher. He went and got the election results here at the Brooktondale Community Center at the time. But typical Barry, always without evidence. And that was the nature of his contributions to the community. Of course, he also supported Molly, and since this is somewhat of a joint celebration, I'll just mention that when Molly was on the Caroline Town Board, one of her biggest projects was to try to save the historical stature of our Old Town Hall, which is in Slaterville Springs. And she got the Old Town Hall listed on the National Registry of Historical Buildings, which was really important. When I joined the town board now, I guess 8 years ago, the first thing that came up was how to renovate the old town hall, and there was a mention of cladding it in new concrete, fancy fiber siding. And I just said, no, you cannot do that. Molly Adams would not have it. And as a result, now we've gotten a statewide grant with Historic Ithaca to renovate the the Old Town Hall. Yesterday we were meeting with the architects, and it will be renovated with the historical clapboards that were put on it initially. So I just thought I'd mention a few of these things for those of you, especially outside of the community, so that you can understand the depth and the roots of Molly and Barry Adams, both in our community and in some of our professional lives.
While we're waiting for the next person to step up, I'm gonna mention that they're gonna do a memorial blood drive, because my dad was like 50 years volunteer with the Red Cross. Not like on awards or anything, he would be there to give out the cookies. You know, and so it was just, you know, the unassuming but very essential role of always being there when they needed somebody. And so the next blood drive in the area is up at the Brookendale Fire Department on August 16th, and they've called it the memory of Barry Adams.
I remember your dad driving the blood that was collected to Rochester.
Can you imagine this was the day, I don't know, I'm sure they wouldn't let anybody do that now, right? They would collect all the blood all around Tompkins County, and then they would call the volunteer Barry Adams to put it in his car with a bunch of like ice packs in a cooler and drive it to Rochester. Anyone else have something to?
Oh, hi, everyone. I have a few memories, some of which kind of connect Barry and Molly, and one that's more just Molly and one that's more just Barry. So I'll start with the one that is just Molly. Many of you may know of the bottle drop-off out here in front of the community center, where any of your Nickelback bottles can go, and it helps to raise some funds for the community center. That started by Molly Adams going around to recycle bins on whatever Monday morning at like the crack of dawn, because the recycle truck comes through here at 6 in the morning. Molly was up before then to grab out any of the Nickelback cans and bottles to then use them to raise funds for the community center. So honestly, when I drop off bottles here, I think of Molly and that. So now I'll do a joint Molly Barry thing, which is when I was running for town board the first time. It was during the fracking fight, and so there was this whole like tension in the community Democratic committee of, should I run on an issue platform instead of a broader, Democrats stand for all these things? And I was like, no, we need to do for just not no fracking. And I wanted to put no fracking on my signs. And some of the more traditional Dems were scared of that. So anyhow, that didn't happen. And honestly, I don't remember which side Molly and Barry were on with that. But shortly after that came time to do the fundraising letter. And Molly invited me over to their house to sit down in the kitchen. She kept a list of donors on a handwritten, and there would be scratched out and new addresses or new phone numbers or whatever.
She always kept it secret.
Yeah, and she kept it secret. That's right. She kept it secret. And anyhow, she would have me the way in hand address, which works for anybody who has to send real mailings out to people. You want them to open the envelope, hand address them, they get opened. So here was this list, and there would be names like Tin Murray and Renee Farrow. And she wanted me to address everything as Mr. and Mrs. So it was Mr. and Mrs. Tim Murray. And I thought, well, no. it's Tim Murray and Renee Farrow. And she was very uncomfortable with that and kind of in a little bit of a dither over it. And, you know, I didn't want to, like, upset her, but it was, you know. So she turns to Barry. And she asked him what she thought of doing it, what he thought of doing it the way that I was suggesting. And he, in that, and Emily, where is Emily?
I'm right behind you.
Oh, I should be speaking behind me, so. I love your word about unassuming, because that's like the perfect word for your dad. And he, in this very just unassuming and yet professorial way, said to Molly, well, dear, the language evolves, and so can conventions. So that was a very sweet thing. And then the last is that I have a memory that was very near Barry's, and Paulus had, I don't know, done something with his shoulder or something. He wasn't well, and Emily needed somebody to stay in the house with Barry while she took Paulus to the doctor or whatever. And so I said, sure, I could fill in and help do that. And so I had some time with Barry, and a lot he was sleeping. But when he wasn't, we had this short and very sweet conversation. And to Emily's comment that he didn't express emotions, he did with me about Emily and Paulus, and just how happy he was for Emily to be with Paulus, and how happy he was for them to have the house together and a way to support them by the apartment, and just how really much they meant to him. So he didn't say it to you, but he said it to me.
I'm Gary Cox. Is this my other right position? There? Is that better? Emily mentioned how she was surprised to see Barry in a different role when he was teaching. And I decided to come up because I think I'm probably the only person here who actually worked for Barry when he was vice provost. I had just been fired as the associate dean of the graduate school, and they were giving me 6 months salary, but I had to find a niche for those 6 months. And I shall always be grateful to Barry for taking on this person who presumably was a failure, right? I just been fired. And if you know the administration at Cornell, you really have to be terrible to be fired. And he did. And so I worked for him first as his assistant. And at the time, he had a lot of different charges. He was getting religious studies going against quite a bit of opposition from the trustees and from other people at the university, because they thought it would involve the teaching of religion, which of course was not the point. And he spent a lot of time defending the idea of religious studies. He was also chairing the committee to find a new Cornell librarian. Enormous job, nationwide search. And he was also heading up the committee to find a new director of the libraries. Any one of these is a time-consuming job. He was handling all those, as well as being the vice provost for undergraduate education. And he was a pleasure to work for. I wish I could have gone on after my 6 months expired. I want to mention two other things. While I was there, I learned that annually he went down to Ithaca High to judge the Shakespeare oratorical, what would be the better word? Recitation contest. And he said, Gary, you know Shakespeare pretty well, come along. So the two of us went down, and it was so interesting seeing him in a role with individual students and how he measured his responses to the person's efforts and made it really an individual kind of commentary, an extremely positive one, pointing out where this could be stronger, but also giving the person real encouragement on the basis of what they had done well. And I can imagine how good he could be in a classroom. And the final thing is, as I understand it, I'm sorry, I'm having first. As I understand it, just step back.
Yeah.
I'm all right. No, as I understand, Barry is largely responsible for getting Regal Theater to show the operas. And talk about a contribution to the community at large. Regal was very skeptical that enough people cared about opera to even fill one theater. And Barry said, why don't you try it? And they did. And I've seen it when 2 theaters were filled. So many, many people owe a debt to Barry they may not even be aware of. But he was a kind, generous person. And I miss him.
Hi there. Well, I have an addendum to Irene's story about Molly going through the recycling. And this is a memory of Molly's memorial service, where Barry got up and in a very charming way talked about how he took over that job when she was gone. And people in the community started calling him Mr. Molly. I also want to say that Molly had her finger on the pulse of the community, and I owe to her my first job out of graduate school. She both knew that Ithaca High School was looking to hire a social worker, and she just also happened to know that I had just finished graduate school and was looking for a social work job. And so she connected us, and I ended up with my first job, and I would not have found out. Applications were due the day she told me about the job, so I owe my first job to her.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Joel Rabinowitz, and I'm here to talk mainly about Barry's long involvement in one of his many volunteer activities, Funeral Consumer Alliance, or the Finger Lakes. But I also want to say that I'm actually, I came here because although I knew Barry in that context, I wish I had known him for a much longer stretch of time, and I wish I had known him in some of these other contexts, and I'm so appreciative of hearing everybody's memories of Barry and Molly. And being here in Brookendale, although my wife and I are not members of the community today, we did live here once upon a time, back in 1989 to 91. We lived on Burns Road Hill, the barn that we rented an apartment there. Being here with everybody today, kind of wish we still lived here. I'm going to read a portion of. We have a newsletter, Funeral Consumer Alliance of the Finger Lakes. We publish it in the spring and in the fall, and we published a Remembering Barry Adams piece. I'm just going to read a little bit about that to just outline his work with Funeral Consumer Alliance of the Finger Lakes. Barry joined the FCAFL board in 2008 when it was still the Ithaca Memorial Society. He was president of the board from 2009 until 2013. He remained on the board until 2019 and then continued to work with the board as an advisor until his death. Barry was a very active board member, taking on many tasks over the years. He recruited new board members and helped orient them to the work we do. He assisted with the biennial price survey of local funeral home prices, gave many public presentations in the community about funeral planning, and he wrote articles for our newsletter and helped us edit a lot of our written materials. And he also oversaw the transition of the organization from Ithaca Memorial Society to Funeral Consumer Alliance of the Finger Lakes, which involved a lot of bureaucratic red tape and dealing with the IRS and getting all of that, with the EIN number and all of that stuff. He dealt with. I got to know Barry when I was director of Green Springs Natural Cemetery, and he had been an advisor along with other colleagues of his in the Funeral Consumer Alliance. He was an advisor to our founders, Green Springs founders who started Green Springs. A few years later, when I was director, he worked with me to organize a tour of Green Springs for the national director, Josh Slocum, of the Funeral Consumer Alliance, the umbrella organization, of which the local that here was an affiliate. It was we had a great tour with Josh Slocum and everything. I was disappointed that Barry couldn't attend because he was sick, I think with pneumonia at that time, I don't know. But in any case, after that, he said, maybe you could help us with recruiting members for our board. So he invited me to a meeting with him and another board member, and I did have somebody to suggest. Angela Manito, who's sitting in the last row.
Who is never forgiven.
I was going to say, you took my line. Angela has been organizing death cafes in Ithaca for quite a few years, and she had already been doing that and had been very active in promoting information about end-of-life issues in her own way. And I mentioned her name, and lo and behold, she was recruited, she joined, and as she says, she'll never forgive me. So then he said, Joel, maybe you could be an advisor to our board. You don't have to be a board member, you don't have to vote or anything, but you could just come to our meetings and give us advice on various things, green cemeteries, burials, etc. So I said, okay. And sure enough, after a couple of years of that, I ended up joining the board. Now I'm the treasurer. Barry was such a stalwart member during COVID, and even after from COVID on, we've had most of our board meetings by Zoom, and he would always Zoom in, and I would see him with surrounded by his books, surrounded by his wonderful study, with his breathing apparatus, He just continued and continued, and I share with him interest in Renaissance history and literature, English, the English language. My dad was a professor of biblical literature at Cornell, and I think my dad would have enjoyed knowing him. I don't know if they ever crossed paths, but there's so many areas of Barry's interest that I would have loved to be involved with, and I'm so glad so many of you were able to do that. So, thank you.
I think this is a little audience participation section. Yes? See?
Great, thanks.
Do you want that? You want this one?
That would probably be good.
Sturdier and
Yeah. I'm Will Feudman. I'm a friend of Emily's. Met her through the world of progressive politics. I wore my Bernie Sanders cap here today, just in memory of our connection. I got to know Barry a little bit when she sent him to me for some acupuncture for his challenges. Anyway, so when a parent dies, it transforms our universe. It is like the world is totally different because our parents have been here since we showed up. And how could they be gone? Things really change. So I've had that experience a few times, and Emily's having that experience these days. It's like my parents are still with me all the time, but they only talk to me occasionally in dreams. This is a song by Phil Oakes, and it deals with really mortality and facing our mortality and what kind of lives do we want to live, recognizing that we're not always going to be here. So the refrain is, I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't hear me singing on this song when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't feel the flowing of the time when I'm gone. All the pleasures of love will not be mine when I'm gone. My pen won't pour a lyric rhyme when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't breathe the bracing air when I'm gone. And I can't even worry about my cares when I'm gone. Won't be asked to do my share when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. from the rain when I'm gone. I can't even suffer from the pain when I'm gone. Can't say who's to praise and who's to blame when I'm gone. So I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. I won't see the golden of the sun when I'm gone, and the evenings and the mornings will be one when I'm gone. Can't be singing louder than the guns when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. All my days won't be dances of delight when I'm gone, and the sands will be shifting from my sight when I'm gone. Can't add my name into the fight when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. And I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone. I can't question how or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. There's no place in this world where I'll belong when I'm gone. I won't know the right from the wrong when I'm gone. You won't find me singing on this song when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it. Guess I'll have to do it. Guess I'll have to do it while I'm here.
Is that everybody? Oh, I just want to say pancake breakfast and Boston Red Sox.
Yes, my dad used to love going to the pancake breakfast with his favorite mug with the Boston Red Sox just to get your vote.
My name is Mary Milne, and I moved to Ithaca with my husband back in 1978. And in those early years, I had hoped to become a graduate student at Cornell in sort of a history of ideas program. And that didn't work out for a variety of reasons, and I just gave up on Cornell. Went on to have a wonderful experience with the Ithaca community, raising my family. I was involved with Family Reading Partnership for a number of years, and just Cornell was behind me. And it was through my connections with Family Reading Partnership. Bridget Huberman this was in 2019, she was again hosting another Kids Book Fest on the theme of words, and she had invited Barry down with all of his dictionaries. This was in the Ithaca High School auditorium gym, and Bridget said, "Oh, you might want to go and introduce yourself to Barry." So had this great conversation with Barry, because one of my wonderful acquisitions, one of my first jobs I had was working as a textbook clerk in a high school back in San Francisco, and they were throwing out all these big dictionaries, Webster's Second International Dictionaries, and I knew that was really something to hang on to. So I, lugged it along with me on my whole path. And so Barry and I were talking about Webster's Second International Dictionary, going on, and we realized that this was a much longer conversation to have. And it turns out that he lived in Brookendale, and at that time I was working with Peggy Dunlop and helping her downsize her considerable amount of fabric, which has gone on to become the Community Quilting Center. Probably a lot of you know about that up at Reuse at Trip Hammer, and you can talk to Peggy about that later if you're interested. So Barry and I got into this little routine where I would come out, I would sit at the market, Brooklands Market here, we'd have a cup of coffee, and then I'd go across the street and work with Peggy. And this went on for quite a while, and we just had a wonderful set of conversations, very stimulating, and I really felt like it was such a privilege to be able to have these kinds of conversations with Barry, kind, generous man that he was, totally not judgmental, and he was kind of like a teacher, but we were really friends in sharing ideas back and forth, and it was just a very precious and special relationship that maybe I might have had at Cornell, decades before, but it was in an informal situation, and we were just kind of exploring as colleagues. Really, there wasn't a sense like, he had a lot of experience, a lot more knowledge, of course, but he was very respectful and a good listener, and we would just bounce ideas back and forth across each other, to each other, and kind of a big theme was deism, the transcendentalists, and is God out there, is God inside, is somehow making that connection, and we didn't get, because this life came to an end a little bit too soon, I wasn't able to nail him down. It's like, well, Barry, what do you really think on these questions? And I kind of knew that he was raised Catholic, and of course his funeral was a beautiful Catholic mass, and I wasn't raised in any religious upbringing, but again, religious studies, just kind of thinking about these much broader issues, and it's that word that can be associated with the best part of Catholicism, the best. If you take away all the horrible parts of Catholicism, historically speaking, that best part is L-O-V-E. And it was a word that we did not speak, but was there. And that word that Shakespeare would say is really in the world around us, and I put together this little collage of Shakespeare quotes over there, and there's a lot of good ones that you can brush up on your Shakespeare. And certainly the one about, I can't remember it, but it's right at the top, about that ends up the good in everything, and that Barry was someone who really celebrated the good in everything.
Is there still ice cream in the kitchen? Oh, just a little bit? Oh, save me one. I just bought one. I think if there's nothing more that people want to say, we can just break into less formalness and mingle, and I might even convince Marty to come up and just play some music, and we can, people who feel like singing can sing. I don't know. We'll see. He's giving me this look. But anyhow, thank you again, everyone, for coming, and have a good afternoon. And you're welcome for the potluck. If people want to come back, since it is only 2:15 now, if you want to go and come back at 5, we'll still be here and eating together. Anything else to announce? On the table back here, there's a little description of the fundraising drive they're doing to try to fix the roof here at the community center. And I've also been working, which has kind of consumed a whole lot of free time that I didn't have, to try to get the Brooklands Market on better footing for the future. And so we've now hooked up the market with a nonprofit that's going to foster care it and get it back in shape to then convert into a community-owned business. And so I'm really excited about that, and there's a little description about that, because I want to make a big donation to them to get them started in memory of my dad and my mom. So, thank you again for coming.